What's up, Hoopers, and welcome to Triple Threat. Happy Wednesday. We are in the midst of the NBA playoffs, the greatest time of year. We have a jam-packed show. Brad Botkin's going to be joining me in just a little bit, and Coach Avery Johnson's going to be in the building. You know, I love whenever I get to pick Coach's brain and hear his opinions about everything and anything regarding basketball. But before we get into all of the playoff madness and everything in between, we got to talk about something on social media. I have been getting texts. There have been articles written. Everybody has been contacting me about this particular tweet. If you haven't seen it, let's throw it up on the screen and we are going to discuss it right here on Triple Threat. I am not dating Anthony Edwards. This is not Anthony Edwards. Color me surprised when this tweet went viral on Twitter a few days ago. I was on Twitter, minding my business, as I usually do, just scrolling through the timeline, looking at what everybody's talking about, and I find this picture of me and the comedian Bubba Dub, who I did a event with during All-Star Weekend in San Francisco. We hosted the Players TV Awards where Carmelo got an award and Chris Paul got an award. It was a great event, had a great time hosting it, and we took this picture backstage. Mind you, I never posted the picture. I don't even know what happened to the picture, so I don't even know how this person found this picture. But that is not the point. The point of the matter is that is not Anthony Edwards. So when I saw this tweet and people are actually commenting underneath this picture, quote retweeting this picture, and really believing the fact that I am in a relationship with Anthony Edwards, I was like, okay, this has gone a little bit too far. And then articles are written. So here's the thing. One, I know you guys see me on TV and I'm sitting down, so there's no way to know how tall I am, but I can promise you I am not 6'7". So if this were Anthony Edwards, I would be a very tall girl, which I'm tall, but I'm not that tall. So unless I grew a foot overnight or Anthony Edwards shrunk to 5'7", I don't even understand how you could think this was Anthony Edwards. So I want to put this to bed because there are still articles being written about this. There are still people contacting me about this. This is not Anthony Edwards. I'm not dating Anthony Edwards. And, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I have met Anthony Edwards. I think he's a great guy. I'm just not with him. So moving on to another guy who just constantly gives us material to talk about, Draymond Green. Now, Draymond has lost his mind, apparently. The Warriors are crushing it in the playoffs. They look to bring a 2-0 lead back to the Bay Area, facing the Rockets tonight. But that's not what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about is this clip of Draymond on his podcast talking about my guy, Karl Anthony Towns of the New York Knicks. And just listen. Just listen to this.
Go win one on the road. And so they still got an opportunity to change that. But Karl Anthony Towns was huge. I thought his defense was great, but aside from his defense was great, his attitude was great, and I'm taking credit for that.
Mm-hmm. Are you?
Of course. Karl Anthony Towns has been a different person since
ever since our debacle.
He's been a different person, and I'm taking credit for that.
He has been a much different leader. He was patient. He let the game come to him. He showed another level of, hey, I've been here before. I know what playoff basketball is about. And I think that's how the Knicks caught Detroit on that 21-0 run. Detroit was playing great, intense regular season basketball.
Yes, they were.
For 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters.
Yep.
Right?
I aspire to have an ego as big as Draymond Green's one day. It's like the sun rose this morning. I'm taking credit for that. The earth is rotating. I'm taking credit for that. The birds are chirping. I'm taking credit for that. In what universe does Karl Anthony Towns' playoff performance have a direct line to you, Draymond? And for people who may not understand what transpired, what led Draymond to saying this, if you remember, Draymond said that Karl Anthony Towns was ducking the smoke from Jimmy Butler when Karl Anthony Towns actually was away from the team because he had a death in his family. It was a family friend. And Draymond said, that Karl Anthony Towns was soft and things like that, and he was ducking the smoke. And apparently he thinks by doing all of that, it lit a fire under Cat. And that fire ignited during the playoffs in Game 1 for the New York Knicks against the Pistons. I don't want to spoil it for you. I don't want to spoil it for you, Draymond, but I'm going to do it anyway. You weren't the reason. Your ego is ginormous. Simmer on down. And Baron Davis, come on now. Sometimes you got to hold your friends accountable and be like, you're doing too much. It has nothing to do with you. But I guess birds of a feather flock together. Look, after the break, we are going to dive into everything the playoffs. We're going to talk about which team or which coach should be on the hot seat if they get bounced in the first round. We're going to talk about Tyrese Halliburton being overrated. Yes, he dethroned Rudy Gobert. And we are going to talk about something else that I'm going to keep a secret until later in the show. Don't move. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everybody. Ashley Nicole Moss here. Brad Botkin joining me in studio. And Coach Avery Johnson is in the building. I'm so excited to have Coach make his Triple Threat return. And Coach, speaking of you and other coaches in the NBA, the brotherhood, if you will, we're going to talk about which coach should be on the hot seat if his team gets bounced in the first round. So there are a bunch of series going on. We didn't select the teams that have interim coaches because obviously they're not getting bounced. They may not even keep that job after this season. So we're going to focus on the teams that have their actual head coaches. So we have the Knicks versus the Pistons. That series is tied 1-1. We have the Bucks versus the Pacers. As we know, the Bucks have taken a 0-2 deficit against the Pacers. Here are the coaches and their teams. We have the Timberwolves and the Lakers. That series is tied 1-1. And we have the Heat and the Cavs. The Cavs have a series lead of 1-0 playing tonight, looking to go up 2-0. So looking at these coaches, we have JB Bickerstaff, who just got the job in Detroit. We have Tom Thibodeau, who's been with the Knicks for a few seasons. Doc Rivers just got the job in Milwaukee. Rick Carlisle has been with the Pacers. Chris Finch in Minnesota. JJ Redick, the new head coach for the Lakers. Eric Spoelstra, who has been with the Miami Heat my entire lifetime. And Kenny Atkinson, the new head coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So looking at this list, Coach, I'll start with you. Which team or which coach do you think is most on the hot seat if their team gets bounced in the first round?
Ashley Nicole Moss's team.
Oh, God.
Here we go.
I knew it.
He's right. He's right.
Hey, this is a team where, as you know, certain teams, if they don't make it to the finals, they consider it a year failure. But considering the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics, the top two teams in the Eastern Conference by regular season record, if the Knicks don't make it to at least the Eastern Conference Finals, you would consider that a colossal failure, especially going up against a young, up-and-coming Detroit Pistons teams where the Knicks have the experience overall as a team. They traded and added Karl Anthony Towns to the team. You have Jalen Brunson, who's a stud. You make the move for Mikal Bridges and give up 4 or 5 first-round draft picks to bring him on. You call it North Villanova. So at the end of the day, I think Coach Tom Thibodeau has the most pressure on him to not get bounced from the first round.
Coach, you can't like when you see your brethren up there where the only time we ever do the tail of the tape and we put the coach mugshots up there is when one of them's going to get fired. It's the only time we devote this much time to the coaches. Not fair. A lot of scapegoats going on. But on that list, I can't imagine 6 of those guys would be in any jeopardy at all. The only 2 are Tom Thibodeau and Doc Rivers.
Can I play devil's advocate, though?
Sure.
The Cavs are the only number 1 seed listed on this list. If the Cavs were to get bounced in the first round by the Miami Heat,
Well,
does that not then make you look at Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs differently? No. Why?
It's never. First of all, it's never going to happen.
But if it were, let's play devil's advocate.
But no, that would just be a complete fluke that you cannot argue with what Kenny Atkinson is. There's no chance that he would get fired. He's probably one of the 3 or 4 most stable coaches in the league right now. I don't think there's any question about that. But I think that you have to look at what Coach said. I would push back a little bit about Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks, it being a colossal failure if they don't make the Eastern Conference Finals. They're gonna have to pull an upset to beat Boston. Now, if they lose to Detroit, I totally agree. It is a colossal failure. They went in and they lost to a team that they should not lose to on paper, that they didn't plan to lose to. But losing to Boston is not a fireable sin. So if they get to the second round and they put up some kind of fight, I think it'll be more how they actually play against Boston.
Fair.
If they are completely overmatched and he looks unprepared, I could see a world where they're like, this is just not good enough with the moves that we made. But in a vacuum, losing to Boston shouldn't be a fireable offense.
I have a quick question. How would you guys look at J.J. Redick if the Lakers lose to Minnesota in the first round?
Good. I mean, I would consider that a failure. The Lakers are you would think on paper, the better team. They have LeBron. They have Luka. They're the higher rated seed. I'm not saying it should be a walk in the park, but the Lakers should be able to beat the Minnesota Timberwolves and advance out of the first round.
I wouldn't say should. I've been saying this for months. I think you can throw the seeds out from 2 to 8 in the Western Conference. The Lakers and Timberwolves are even teams.
I mean, I wouldn't say I don't think
caught on the 6-3.
But I don't think it would be a failure of J.J. Redick. I do think the Lakers are the favorites to win this series, but if they were to lose, I think the argument would then go back to the fact of they don't have a deep roster. It's too LeBron and Luka centric. They don't have enough. There would be justifiable excuses as to why they were not able to beat the Timberwolves. I think
when they made the Luka trade, there were people. I was one of them that pointed to there's at times with particular lineups that JJ plays, there's some lack of ball pressure defense. They can allow some penetration, and they don't have that backline defender anymore in Anthony Davis to clean all that up. So there are some roster flaws.
Right.
This is a team that I think if you were to go and put a guy like J.J. Redick or Kenny Atkinson on the hot seat because they lose let's just hypothetically say they lose in the first round, you're just admitting that you're just a completely results-oriented organization. Where when you look at the job that J.J. Redick's done this year, the job that Kenny Atkinson's done, you have to evaluate that independent of if they even did have a bad series. That would not be the way to you would be a joke of a franchise if you come in for 1 year and everything goes up and you play great and then one bad thing happens and you move on. That would be ridiculous.
Coach, I mean, call me crazy, but I feel like the Lakers have been doing that for years. That's why they've had such a crazy coaching carousel and a revolving door of coaches, is because they put these unrealistic expectations on the Lakers and a roster that probably, if they do get out of the first round in some situations, it's a miracle of the basketball gods, but they think it's championship every single year, and if that's not the case, then they have failed. I mean, go ahead, Coach.
And Dark made it to the Western Conference Finals and still got bounced, after a couple of lackluster years. I will say this. Let me get back to one point that Brad made about Doc Rivers. Remember, this coaching change with Milwaukee happened last year when they fired their coach and they were 30-13. Okay? And then Milwaukee obviously got bounced from the playoffs. I agree with Brad. Doc would probably be in some sort of trouble if they get bounced in the first round against Indiana, especially when they fired Adrian Griffin, who probably was headed towards a Coach of the Year.
Isn't that wild?
Especially when you start off 30-13.
But this is why you have to look at the context.
But you know what would be wilder, Brad, is that even if he did get fired, Doc Rivers would have another job before the season started.
He'd probably fire Thibodeau and then he'd get the Knicks job.
Be my coach.
Get the Knicks job. I always find that funny when teams say, like, we need a new voice, and it's some guy that the last team just said he needs to be out.
Yeah,
now he's the new voice for somebody.
We all know Doc Rivers has 9 lives, so he'll land on his feet somewhere else.
These are roster problems. if Kyle Kuzma is your third scorer, then good luck to any coach trying to win in the playoffs.
I mean, when we look at my Knicks coach, I was having this conversation with my dad yesterday because, Brad, to your point, the Knicks should beat the Pistons. And one of the things that my dad said that he was, concerned about was kind of just the narrative that has existed around Tom Thibodeau since he got with the Knicks, is that he runs his guys into the ground. And I'd be interested, given the success, even in spite of that the Knicks have had in the postseason. I mean, 3 years in the playoffs consistently, back to back to back, is the fact that they would get knocked out by the Pistons in the first round, being exhausted enough to erase everything that Tibbs had done to kind of turn this organization around.
Yeah, because it's Detroit. They're a young team. This is a team that basically lost every game last year.
This is true.
Put that 28-game losing streak and give them credit. They've been able to turn it around. J.B. Bickerstaff done a magnificent job. Cade Cunningham, who I've been knowing since he was 6 years old, this guy's really come into his own, and he's an all-star, and he's going to consistently be a perennial all-star. The additions of guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., you look at Harris, Beasley, those were all the right moves. But with all of that said, the Knicks should beat Detroit. And right now, I'm a little bit concerned about your Knicks because guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Beasley, those guys really haven't played extraordinarily well, especially Hardaway Jr. But I believe he's going to shoot the ball much better at home. And if Detroit wins Game 3, Ashley, your Knicks could potentially be in a little trouble.
They're in trouble right now. The Knicks have lost this series everything but a 21-0 run. They've lost probably 7 of 8.
Stop it, Brad.
No, they have. And the Knicks specifically were built to beat Boston. They took the Boston blueprint. They said, we're going to load up on two-way wings. They paid 5 draft picks for Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, $200 million, Josh Hart. They looked at the Celtics and they said, we need to match their two-way perimeter depth. We got a stretch shooter now. They matched the Porzingis template. We got a shot creator in Brunson and Tatum. They tried to absolutely replicate the Boston blueprint to beat the Celtics. And if they don't even make it to the Celtics, they put it together to beat the Celtics. Thibodeau's going to be in a lot of trouble.
I'm ignoring all this negativity. I'm hugging my comfort blanket because I'm manifesting positive vibes to my New York Knicks. Orange and blue skies, baby. We are going to bounce back. This is our series to win. And while I collect my thoughts and simmer on down, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Ashley, Brad, Coach Avery Johnson in the building. And look, if you can believe it, we are going to talk Nico Harrison once again. The gift that keeps on giving.
Never die.
The world of basketball was shook when Luka was traded to the Lakers. And ever since then, it has been an absolute free fall of the Dallas Mavericks and the Dallas Mavericks front office trying to explain away this trade. And most recently, Nico Harrison held a press conference that no media was allowed in, which then took another hit of, the Mavericks trying to control the narrative of this just bonkers trade. But recently, we got another Nico Harrison press conference. This time, cameras and media and recording devices were allowed, and there were a lot of sound bites that came out of this, including Nico Harrison saying that he did not know just how important Luka was to the Dallas Mavericks. Listen to this.
When you were kicking the idea of this trade around, and you had various scenarios planned in your head, did the anger and outrage from the fan base, has that exceeded what you were kind of planning for?
Yeah, good question. I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level, but really the way we looked at it is, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so unfortunately we weren't able to do that, so it just continued to, go on and on.
Okay, so before we react to that, he then later in that conference said that he brought the idea of trading Luka to the Dallas Mavericks owner, Patrick Dumont. And he was, at first, he kind of chuckled, not laughed, chuckled. Those were the words Nico Harrison used, and said that then he was later reportedly frustrated with Nico Harrison for not warning him how the fan base would react to a Luka trade. And this is a quote that Nico gave regarding trading Luka, saying, "When you trade a guy of Luka's caliber, you're not taking it lightly. So we discussed everything, but we really feel that defense is our calling card, and that is what we are hanging our hat on." Coach, I feel like, look, my mom is a casual basketball fan. She's not as in it as I am or my dad is. She knows like the basics. Even she knew how important Luka was to the Dallas Mavericks. Are you buying what Nico's saying, that he didn't know how much Luka meant to the city of Dallas and the Dallas Mavericks fans?
All right, first of all, with Nico Harrison, I believe that he understood how important Luka was. That soundbite just didn't come across right. This guy's a smart guy, all right? I remember when he was working for Nike and I was coaching in college, and he was running the Peach Jam in Augusta, Georgia, the big AAU tournament. So I had several conversations with Nico over the years, and have run across him several times here in Dallas. That's one of those things that come out of your mouth that when you say it, you just want to grab it back. So this guy, obviously this was his first go around as a general manager. He's made some positive moves, and all the positives that he's done, trading for PJ Washington, Kyrie Irving, Gafford, a lot of the guys pre-Luka, I know that's kind of getting drowned out of this, but that's just one of those sound bites. I would hope that would be his last interview for the next couple of months.
He should never talk about this ever again. And I think
the more he's talking about it, the more he says.
And I think, Brad, you could almost hear him certain points of this conference trying to convince himself of what was coming out of his mouth. And it's kind of a direct contradiction because, like I said, later in that press conference, he admitted that when he brought up the idea of trading Luka to the owner, he chuckled, he laughed. So the owner laughed. So that kind of is like a red flag, like, oh, this probably will be a big deal.
Imagine if you went to your owner and you phrased that question differently and said, "Do you want to light $900 million on fire?" It's going to cost them 9 figures. They've already run the numbers. So, imagine you put it to it in that way. That's what Luka's worth. This is an extremely layered, nuanced discussion to have that you can't really have in sound bites, to Coach's point. I do believe he has been surprised by the backlash. There's no way, like Coach said, there's no way he didn't understand what Luka meant. But I do think there is a degree of surprise of how much the backlash has been, because I think he believes deep down, and we're giving him hell for he just keeps repeating defense wins championships, and that's sort of his answer to everything. But it really does seem like it is that simple to him. On paper, he looked at the team and said, we have a better chance to win with a rim protector, two-way, top 15 player in Anthony Davis paired with Kyrie Irving. And he sort of took out of the equation the love affair between Luka and Dallas and looked at it just from a purely on-paper basketball standpoint. And I'm telling you, I said this the night the trade went down, there actually is a reason, you don't have to agree with it, but there is a reasonable justification if Anthony Davis is healthy, which is a big if, that Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis as a two-man game, the rim protection of Davis and Lively, the lineup versatility that you can play big or small, there is a lot of evidence that that team is more suited to win a championship than a heliocentric James Harden, Damian Lillard in Portland, Luka Doncic type, Trae Young type offense. There's not a lot of evidence that those teams win championships. So I'm telling you, I said this from the start, there is a basketball justification, but only if you completely remove the emotional aspect of Luka and the Dallas connection. And he didn't do that. He's surprised that people didn't see his point when he says defense wins championships. He thinks it's such a reasonable justification, which it's not entirely bonkers, that he is surprised by this backlash. He thought he would be able to explain it through a purely basketball prism.
I will say this, and Coach, I'm interested on your perspective here, because to your point, we don't know. This may work next season when the Dallas Mavericks are fully healthy. They may be better than the Lakers are, and Nico Harrison may look like a genius, and we will all be bowing down at his altar.
But now he's not even going to get a chance. Kyrie blew his knee out. He's not going to be back till January.
Right, but January is still a lot of time left in the season. Like, we may be having a drastically different conversation about the Mavericks this time next year, but I think the thing for me that still wasn't addressed, and I wish were addressed in this press conference by Nico Harrison, is Luka received so much just nastiness from the Dallas Mavericks, whether directly, indirectly, sources. It was just kind of like a deformation of character from someone who really put the Mavericks back on the map post Dirk. And I wish that there was an address of, look, it got a little sticky. It got a little ugly. We appreciate Luka and everything he brought to this organization. If I could have done this differently and maybe gave him the heads up and had a conversation, I wish I could have done that. That whole emotional aspect of just kind of just chastising and throwing a player to the side that brought so much to the city just still wasn't addressed. And I think a lot of fans were looking for that. And Luka, even in his interview with ESPN, said it's just really sad, everything that's coming from that side. I mean, Coach, from that side of things, why do you think that wasn't ever addressed?
Well, I agree with you, Ashley. And I think when you make a trade of this magnitude, there always needs to be some sort of reason. And then because of that, then players, you got to throw some shade at a guy. He's overweight, or, he's partying too much. And to try to justify making a trade of this magnitude so that the fans at that point would say, okay, we totally get it. That didn't work. Even with some of the reason and the rationale for trading Luka, the fans are never... They're never going to forgive the organization for this. Here's what I would say also. When you're making a trade of this magnitude, you got to get the maximum in return. Couple of more draft picks, another really good player, with all due respect. Anthony Davis is terrific when he's healthy, but, he only has a few years left. So you would have hoped that they would have gotten more draft capital, maybe another player in this trade, maybe took it out to get one or two more teams involved. So I think that's probably where they kind of underperformed a little bit and not getting more back for a 25-year-old in the prime of his career.
Yeah, that's a great point, because...
Well, Brad, before you bring your point in on that, in that same vacuum, a reporter asked Nico Harrison why he shouldn't be fired, and this was his reply to that.
Luka comes back to town, the Lakers game's happening, and you're standing there and there's thousands of people chanting for you to be fired. That's an experience that none of us, no one's chanting for for us to lose our jobs. Why shouldn't you be fired?
Well, one, I think I've done a really good job here, and I don't think I can be judged by the injuries this year. You have to judge from totality, from beginning to end. And so I think I have a really good working relationship with Patrick.
And that felt like when you put the light on someone in an interrogation and you talk about a hot seat. That was burning up.
And usually reporters kind of fumble over their words in those situations. He just straight up said,
I'll give you the last soundbite here. Your reaction to that, just
unbelievable. He just completely, to Coach's point, he whiffed on the return. And that's a part we're not talking about enough. If you are going to make this kind of trade, which almost nobody else in the world would do, you've got to get more return. And then he says, I can't be judged on the injuries, but one of the main components that you have to consider in a trade like this is the likelihood that Anthony Davis is going to get injured. 7 times in his career, since Luka's been in the league, 7 times Anthony Davis has missed more than 10 games in a given injury. Luka had only done that once. So you're building up this whole case that you're trading for Anthony Davis because he's less likely to get injured because Luka doesn't take care of himself. And really, Anthony Davis has been 7 times more likely to miss extended time than Luka Doncic. So is it really an accident that an injury happened immediately? It's like it almost underscores the point that he didn't really look at this thing from all angles. It really sort of reeks of a guy that, bottom line, throw all the basketball stuff out. I don't know that Nico Harrison really liked Luka Doncic.
Maybe.
It seemed like he thought he didn't work hard. It bugged him how he controlled the whole team. It really feels like a guy that was just itching to get rid of him.
Well, look, I hope, to Coach's point, this is the last time we ever have to talk about Nico Harrison. I hope he never steps foot in front of a mic for the rest of the year. Just chill, go on vacation, let the smoke kind of settle, and come back, start new with a new NBA season. And hopefully we all forget about this catastrophe that is Luka, the Dallas Mavericks, and Nico Harrison. But when we come back, there is a players poll, an anonymous players poll that once again is back in the spotlight. It happens every year, and it delivers some interesting results. We'll discuss after this. Welcome back to Triple Threat, everybody. And before the break, I teased the anonymous players poll that circulates every time around this year. And The Athletic once again released the results. And it's interesting. One being because Tyrese Halliburton has dethroned Rudy Gobert as the most overrated player in the league, as voted by anonymous NBA players. Rounding out the top 3, Rudy Gobert, number 2, Trae Young, number 3. Interestingly enough, Rudy Gobert and Trae Young have been in the top 3 for the past few years. It's just now Tyrese Halliburton's number 1. I guess people are mad that he got the gold medal for doing no work. Is that what is that what this is about? Because it just, Jimmy Butler, why is he catching a stray? Like, well,
I'm still trying to clear my head from what Coach was talking about off air.
Off air.
We're going to keep it off air, but that was good stuff.
Some other poll results, we'll dive into these quickly and then react. Aside from your own current coach, who is the best coach in the league? And OKC's coach actually came in at number 1, Kenny Atkinson number 2, and Eric Spoelstra rounding out the top 3.
No, Tom Thibodeau doesn't even make the list?
He does not make the list, unfortunately. I guess they didn't pull any Knicks players. But on the other side of that conversation, who is the worst coach in the league? Brian Keefe actually made number 1. Coach Bud is on that list, which is surprising to me. I know. I like Doc Rivers is on the list. They didn't poll me, guys, so I don't. Tom Thibodeau is on this list, though.
Jordy Fernandez being on there is ridiculous.
Michael Malone being on this list is insanity. And Doug Christie just got the job, so that's nuts. Moving on, what is the league's best organization? Rounding out the top 3, your Golden State Warriors coming in at number 1. Oklahoma City, number 2. The Boston Celtics are number 3. The Knicks are not listed on this. The league's worst organization, the Knicks are on this list, but at the bottom, the Hornets actually lead here. The Wizards, number 2, and the Pelicans are number 3, given kind of just the disaster of a season that they've had
Tough
individually.
For them, though. It's so many injuries.
Yeah, that's true. This one's interesting. In this 3-point revolution age, are analytics good or bad for the game? Almost 40% said bad. And then somewhere in the middle came in at number 2. That's interesting. And lastly, we were laughing about this yesterday, Brad. Which player would you least likely want to get into a fight with? James Johnson came in at number 1, 63%. Steven Adams and Isaiah Stewart round out the top 3. So, Coach, out of all of these results of these polls, these anonymous polls, which I hate, because like if these players are going to have this energy towards like their fellow players, like put your name on it at least. Like
that's what Rick,
stand 10 toes down.
That was Rick Carlisle's
like
point.
Have some conviction in your opinion. But which result kind of was the most surprising to you, or least surprising?
I don't believe Tyrese Halliburton is the most overrated player in the NBA. He's a really good player, and I know he's had some back and forth even with guys from my era like Tim Hardaway Jr. But Tyrese Halliburton, he plays the right way. You know, he's a pass-first point guard. He does a really nice job with Rick Carlisle's offense with Indiana. You know, he plays his role. You know, even this summer, I know it's a non-NBA situation, but on our Olympic team, you know, he was the 12th man basically, and he played his role, played when needed. But, you know, he's improved his three-point shot. I tell you what, Sacramento, they'll look like a much better team if he was with Sacramento back in uniform with them. But this kid, you know, he's an unselfish player. You know, he plays hard. So I wouldn't have Tyrese Halliburton as my most.
Coach, I would flip it. I would have Tyrese Halliburton as one of the most underrated. I really think Tyrese Halliburton is, you could make a case as a top 5 point guard in the league, and he does not get talked about in that way. My contention on these overrated, underrated things is there are, for all of our advanced mechanisms in evaluating players, we still have a lot of primitive viewpoints in terms of the prototype of what a superstar basketball player should look like. And Tyrese Halliburton's jump shot does not fit that prototype. He's not an incredible athlete. He's not a great defender. I think there are a lot of guys that look in the league and see him shoot the ball, whether it goes in or not, just simply that shot, the form of it, and they think that's not a player. There's something embedded, and it went on for Steph Curry for years. It took an overwhelming amount of evidence for people to put Steph in LeBron's category because he didn't fit the bill in terms of the aesthetics of how a superstar is supposed to look. And Tyrese Halliburton just has a quirky game. He's got a quirky shot. He is not prototypical in any way. And I think that bakes in, whether it's subconscious or not, I think it bakes in to players' opinions of other players, where they look at a guy like Kyrie Irving and he just fits everything that basketball players look up to.
Right.
He can do things that they can't. There's a lot of guys, I think, that look at Tyrese Brown. Man, he shoots funky. He doesn't dunk. He does. You know, I think there's a lot of those things still baked into evaluations.
I'm interested on. Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
I think also that he talks a little bit on the court, and he has a high opinion of himself, and that can rub players the wrong way. You know, where guys will say, "Hey, stop talking. You're not that guy."
Yeah.
You know? So I think that has something to do with it, but I think he's a terrific.
He also has like multiple voices too. Maybe that irks people. He has like different voices. Coach, I'm interested on your opinion on the results of these coaching polls, because I think with OKC, no surprise there, #1 team in the NBA, young team. I think Coach Mark has done a phenomenal job. I just think that organization in general has done a phenomenal job really building this team. But when we go to the worst coaches in this league, Brian Keefe, I mean, the Wizards, like, what do you want him to do? It's kind of like, and Coach Bud really just has taken me back. I feel like, yes, the Suns' tenure was not what everyone expected to be. Most people knew that it wasn't going to work, but I don't think it didn't work because of Coach Bud. This is a championship winning coach. I like him. If the Knicks were to fire Thibodeau, I would take him in New York. I mean, I don't really agree with these worst coaching results. It's kind of just like, it seems like an easy target.
Yeah, I was a little shocked to see Mike Budenholzer on there. And it's easy to pile on, you know, when a coach gets fired. I don't know exactly when these polls were taken. Maybe you guys have that information. But I'm surprised to see Bud on that list. He was a solid coach. He comes from, you know, that Greg Popovich tree of coaches. You know, coached in Atlanta, won a championship in Milwaukee. I don't know if that roster construction in Phoenix was conducive to him, you know, coaching at an all-time high level. Bradley Beal wasn't the right fit, isn't the right fit for that roster construction to complement Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So I was a little surprised to see Bud that high on the worst coaches list from the anonymous poll.
I think for me, the thing that I'm most interested with is not so much like the coach and whatever, but when it comes to the player specific polls, like overrated, underrated, I wonder, like, in the locker room, if you're voted the most overrated, like if you're Tyrese Halliburton, do you walk into your locker room like, all right, which one of y'all voted in this? Like, are you looking at people crazy now?
There was a fake quote going around. I think it was fake last night, where him and Damian Lillard got into it during the game, and they put a quote on.
The poll results have actual quotes as to why Tyrese Halliburton's overrated from actual players. So, like, if I'm Halliburton, I'm walking into that locker room like, all right, which one of y'all think?
It definitely wasn't one of his teammates. There's no way.
You don't know. It's anonymous.
It's guys who, it wasn't. No, it wasn't one of his teammates. But I'm interested in the coach things. The coach thing that interests me. 4 coaches on that bottom, when you showed that bottom tier. 4 coaches with titles: Mike Malone, Doc Rivers, Nurse, and Budenholzer, all with titles, and now they're some of the worst coaches in the league. So, and Jordy Fernandez being on there is ridiculous. Coach, I got a question for you. How many wins? To me, a coach makes 5 to at most 10% difference on a team. You're 90% tied to your roster. So, if a coach can make at most 5 wins different, would we feel different about Budenholzer if the Suns won whatever they won, 43 games instead of 38? I mean, don't you think that there's only so much that you probably have to judge coaches in like a 4 to 5 win window, because that's really the only impact they can have. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fair. And, you also judge coaches by the cycles of a season, staying away from really significantly long losing streaks. That's another
so you don't
way
let
that
anything you don't let anything spiral.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Interesting.
Well, listen, we look forward to next season when there's another anonymous players poll around this time.
I actually do. Secretly, I do.
Messy.
I can't wait.
When we come back, we're going to dig into the bag. I asked what would be the biggest upset of this postseason in the NBA, and the answers might surprise you. Welcome back, everybody. It is now time for In Your Bag, where I pose a random social media question and we pull some of the best answers. And this week I asked, what do you think will be the biggest upset of the NBA playoffs? So, guys, I'm going to read through them. Just give me a yay or a nay so we can get through all of them in time. All right, so throw the first one up there. Let's see what we have. Clippers beating the Nuggets. With all that talk about Jokic all season long, is a heliocentric offense the way to win in 2025? Yay or nay, Brad?
No, that's not. First of all, they're not heliocentric, but nay, that's not.
Okay.
This is not an upset.
All right, Coach, yay or nay?
Nay.
Okay.
No.
Let's move on to the next one. What do we got here? Maybe a hot take, but I think the Grizzlies beat the Thunder. Ja is coming back with a vengeance next game, and the Thunder too young and inexperienced. The Grizzlies will win in 7. I think we all agree this is a nay.
Yeah, this sounds about as smart as the Grizzlies.
All right, what do we got here? Next one. The Lakers get bounced in the first round again. Coach, yay or nay?
Yay.
Ooh, spicy. All right, next one.
Yeah.
I still say nay.
What do we got? The Indiana Pacers win the championship. That would be the biggest upset of the NBA playoffs. Also, that would instantly prove that Tyrese Halliburton is one of the elites in the game. Yay or nay?
Well, if it happens, sure, yay.
All right, last one. Heat over Cavs in 6 games. Coach, yay or nay?
Well, no, the Heat's not.
He's like, is this a trick question? Yeah,
No,
total
hey.
nay. They threw us some softballs here. These are
I'm surprised no one had my Knicks in there.
And the one with the Lakers, let me just respond again. The Lakers are going to beat Minnesota.
All right. You heard it here first.
Okay,
Coach Avery Johnson put his stamp on it. For myself, Brad, and Coach Avery Johnson, thank you so much for joining us. If you missed any minutes of the show, scan this QR code and watch full episodes on the CBS Sports YouTube page.